Hey, what's up, Facebook? You got Dr. Nick Barnes here, Dr. Casey Pride for our third episode, which is awesome. And so I'm so glad you guys are tuning in today. It's going to be awesome Facebook Live. We have some great content and context that we're going to deliver you more truth when it comes to just what's going on in our culture, how to perceive this, and just really to post some questions on where your beliefs are, why you have them. The last couple of weeks, the videos we've been doing have been almost going viral. We have people that are messaging us, leaving comments in the news feed from all over the world, and it's been pretty awesome. And so, and it's interesting. Majority of the people agree, which is awesome. And so we want to know who's out there listening, where you're from. So just just write in the comment section on in the news feed where you're from, where you're watching from. And any opinions or comments you have, anything that backs up our stuff, or maybe even questions the stuff that we're saying. Why? At the end of the day, as Dr. Casey was talking with me before we came on, that this stuff is changing by the hour sometimes, and so of course we want to stay up to speed on everything. And Dr. Casey's been invited to do more and more Facebook Lives, and so his content is going all over the world right now. And so it's an honor to be on Facebook Live with him. And so we just wanted to kind of get a little recap for the week and really, what's the vision and what's the mission and how are we going to get going back to normal? We're pretty positive guys. I know many of you who are watching us and following us seem to be pretty positive with a different outlook on things and really hopeful for the future. And a disclaimer, guys, we know people out there are suffering with COVID. We know people who've passed away with COVID. We know some of you know loved ones that are struggling with this, and we know there's a lot of medical doctors, nurses, surgeons, people in the medical model that follow us. And so we just appreciate you guys for doing what you do. We know that you're on the front lines, and no matter what numbers are out there that are skewed or misleading or truthful, whatever the case would be in regards to any numbers, we know people are still dying with COVID. Like we get that. We know it's still a thing. It's not made up. And so we just want to shed light on that and say, listen, let's go over some of the things that we can get back to normal and figure out, is this, as I've been saying, is it logical? Is it sustainable? And so before we get into some content, Dr. Casey, kind of share with people like what your journey has been over the last 7 days, and all the outlets that you've been speaking on, and what's coming up for you down the pipeline.
Oh gosh, man. Yeah, I've had a lot of really cool opportunities to sort of share my thoughts on everything going on. I just went live this morning with an awesome human being out on the East Coast, Deepal Shah, on her Quantum Body Awakening podcast. This Saturday, we're going up to Sacramento to make our voices heard peacefully at the Capitol here about reopening California. And then Sunday, I have the opportunity to speak alongside Dennis Prager at a rally at Los Angeles at City Hall. So that's what's coming up. I would encourage anybody, if you're in California, even if you're not in California, get to California this weekend. There's a lot going on. We have an opportunity to really shift the conversation that's happening right now.
That's awesome. That's awesome, man. Well, keep doing what you're doing. I know you're fighting out there, so that's great. And you guys, just jump right into it. I have 3 kids under 6. Many of my patients and friends and family members have kids that are in the school system, and we see a lot of people in administration, educators and principals, you name it, as patients. And so this past week, the CDC put out potential guidelines. I'll underline and highlight in bold potential, so don't overreact, everybody. These are potential guidelines if and when schools do reopen. And so I will tell you that the CDC took time to put some of these guidelines together, and we do have to talk about it. We do have to recognize it that they put them together. They're written down for a reason. Will these come to pass? I believe it's impossible to make 99% of these things come to pass, but it is pretty frightening on us seeing where things could potentially go just when you get a group of people saying, well, this is what it's going to be like in schools, right? And so I'll just rattle some of the things off here that the new CDC guidelines for reopening schools potentially would be to wear masks for kids ages 2 and older. No sharing of any items or supplies, all belongings, individual cubbies, Desks must be 6 feet apart, all facing the same way. Distancing on school buses, so one child per seat, and skipping rows on a school bus. Installing sneeze guards and partitions wherever you cannot space 6 feet apart. One-way routes and hallways. Tape on sidewalks and walls to ensure kids stay 6 feet apart. Sounds like prison to me. No communal shared spaces. So no cafeterias being shared together. Kids eating lunch at their desk potentially. Playgrounds. There's going to be less kids on the playground at a time. They propose putting a child limit on the playground. So you know how businesses are having to follow the 10-person rule. Hopefully it's not that bad, but they have to follow some type of rule. Physical barriers or screens between sinks and bathrooms, which is ridiculous to me. This is crazy. Only prepackaged boxes or bags of food instead of cafeteria food. Man, guys, cafeteria food is bad enough, let alone processed bagged food for our kids. Let them eat some fruit, for goodness sakes, right? No field trips, assemblies, or external organizations in the schools. Limit volunteers and visitors, because they already had been doing that, so I can't imagine how much more they can limit that. Same children stay with the same staff all day long. No switching groups or teachers. Let's create antisocial children now. Stagger arrival and departure times for students to limit exposure to crowds of kids. If possible, daily health and temperature checks, which is against civil. It's a rights issue. You're not going to check my kid's temperature, by the way. And several rules about cleaning and disinfecting throughout the day. Of course, that's going to probably happen. So these are just some guidelines, guys. I just want to rattle off to you just to recognize that. Talk to anyone in education. That it's just impossible. That's not going to happen. The amount of school buses that are necessary, the amount of more carbon footprint that would actually happen, more desks, more classrooms, more teachers. It's just absolutely insane. And so, what do you think about that, Dr. Casey? I think it's pretty ridiculous.
I mean, you asked those two great questions. Is it logical? And first of all, the kids are the lowest risk group of people who are affected by this.
Yeah.
So it's not logical. Is it sustainable? No. I mean, you and I have already talked about this. You have a massive family wellness practice with a lot of kids. You have principals who are in your practice. I mean, I can't imagine being a teacher in that kind of system.
Right.
So
right. Yeah. So I think one of the things is that just understanding who shaped who you are, whether it's good or bad. As a kid, and I'll be honest, a lot of my peers helped in shaping who I am. Like the exposure to kids and exposure to teachers and organized sporting events. All those things, and that's another thing too. If schools are going to change, imagine what team sports are going to look like for youth. I mean, it's going to be drastically different, and that's a really big concern that I have. And so, I think we got to step back and say, man. As you say, is it logical? Is it sustainable? And if we want our kids to be well-rounded individuals, they need people. They need each other, and they need an exposure to a social environment that may not always be perfect and protected. Let alone just the physiological side of this, as to be okay, they need to have exposure so they actually get exposed to germs, viruses, infections, so they're not raised in a bubble. And that's just what needs to happen, right? And so,
what kind of kids are we going to be graduating from our schools when they're 18 years old, who are stuck in this kind of system with no social contact, not sitting with each other, not having conversations, not hugging, not touching? I mean, what is that going to look like 10, 15 years from now? That sounds like a disaster.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So why don't you go over what the numbers you were talking about earlier?
Well,
right.
Yeah, I mean, and again, back to this question: is it logical? Is it sustainable? We've talked so much about what are the what is the worst case scenario with this virus? What's the worst possible case scenario with it? And what we're not looking at, and what our politicians aren't looking at, is what's the worst case scenario of shutting down the economy for an extended period of time with no end in sight? And one thing that's really coming forward in the media right now is suicide. And Nick, I might have lost you here. I don't know if it's just me or not, but I'm just going to keep going with this. But the topic of suicide and depression and drug use that is just skyrocketing under these policies. And I have some numbers here that I want to throw to you guys just so you really get this. But there was an article that came out recently in Los Angeles at a call center that serves Los Angeles and Orange County in California, where I am here. In February, the calls to this suicide hotline, there were 22 calls in February. And in March, that jumped 8,000% to 1,800 calls in March. In Walnut Creek, California, doctors at the John Weir Medical Center in Walnut Creek say they've seen more deaths by suicide during this quarantine period than deaths from the COVID-19 virus. And the New York Times put an article out just a few days ago that there's evidence that suicide rates go up during economic hardship. And the rate increased roughly doubled in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis. So we're looking at some serious numbers from this, because this is obviously much worse. There was a group called the Wellbeing Trust. It's a national public health group that recently warned that as many as 75,000 Americans could die because of drug or alcohol misuse and suicide. And this was attributed to several things. One, the growing unemployment rate, economic downturns, stress caused by isolation, and lack of a definitive end date. We got you back?
I'm back.
Good. And this was such a dramatic increase that this is an article from CNN that I'm sure Dr. Nick will share with you. There's been such a dramatic increase, and this is a growing concern, that the U.S. Senate passed a bipartisan bill that would make the suicide hotline, which is an 800 number, a 3-digit number, just like 911. It'll be 988. Because suicide is becoming such a big issue that they want a 3-digit number that everybody can remember. Okay, and if you don't see that as a problem, man, I mean, this is a big deal. So if we're going to look at the worst case scenario of a virus with an above 99% survival rate, we also need to really look at worst case scenario of what these extended lockdowns with no end in sight are going to do to people's mental health.
Yeah, and I think to that point, like I was just reading something on social media the other day about how, and I honestly, it just slipped my mind, unfortunately, like just thinking about the veterans and the amount of suicides just in that subcategory with people who are suffering with PTSD, and how, you know, a really big part of their counseling and coping, I guess, or managing the PTSD is to being social and being engaged in the community and not isolating. Yeah. And it was just a heartbreaking article about how they've been forgot about, right? And how people don't recognize that is a part of the counseling, right? For PTSD is don't isolate. And when there's forced isolation, I mean, it's a huge concern. And of course, you know, I was just thinking of someone who suffers with PTSD. My heart breaks for someone like that because they're already anxious, fearful of their environment. And now, you know, people are fearful of everything. You know, everyone's on the same, unfortunately, at least from a perception level, it seems like people are on the same page of fear and anxiousness. And so now they live in this culture of fear and anxiety. And so, yeah, that's huge, man. It's huge.
Yeah. And, you know, this topic of quarantine and COVID-19 is such a divisive, polarizing topic right now. And just sort of the emotional charge around the topic is dividing people, even I'd say just as much, if not more, than the quarantine.
Yeah.
Man, this is no time to be isolating, man. Even if you disagree with people on what their opinion is on this right now, now's the time to be reaching out to those people and just loving on them. Yep. You know, love it. If you love somebody, if you care about somebody, tell them, because people need to hear that right now.
Yep. I agree, man. I agree. You know, another thing that came out this past week was the CDC recognizing that the virus does not spread as easily as they once thought, specifically with contaminated surfaces. And so I'm just going to go to literally their website and read some of this stuff off. So at March 28th, they said that they suggested that the virus can remain in the air for up to 3 hours. So is that logical or is it sustainable? No. So even if you go to Deerberg's, Walmart, Schnucks, you name Target, whatever it is, and you're trying to avoid somebody else, well, if someone else sneezed 3 hours ago, it's going to stay in the air. Good luck. So I just don't get it. It's that alone we should be questioning, right? There's something called gravity. I know it sounds weird, but and then live on surfaces such as plastic and stainless steel for up to 3 days. This prompted everybody to wipe everything down. However, at the time, the study was yet not peer-reviewed. So let me tell you this, is that there was an assumption that was made, a theory that was made as truth, as fact, and it was not peer-reviewed. And they published it, and they told everybody about it, and that was their theory, and the culture responded with ordering an immense amount of Purell, ordering wipes, wearing gloves, wearing masks, because they said a virus can live in the air for up to 3 hours, and it can live on plastics and stainless steel surface for up to 3 days. It was a lie. It was a lie, and they've even actually admitted it. Like, actually, we were wrong. We were wrong. And a medical doctor says this. This is a medical doctor saying, I think this new guideline helps people understand more about what does and doesn't increase risk. It doesn't mean we stop washing our hands, but it does allow us to be practical and realistic as we try to return to a sense of normalcy. Now, what are the new guidelines? Well, the biggest thing they want you to recognize is that this virus can spread through respiratory droplets produced when an infected person coughs, sneezes, or talks into your face. Apparently, they're still sticking to the 6-foot rule. That was never studied either, by the way. So the 6-foot rule. And so if someone sneezes at you and it's really close to your face somehow, weird, then you're going to get it. These droplets, this is gross. These droplets can land in mouths or noses of people who are nearby, less than 6 feet away, and possibly be inhaled into the lungs. Right? And so, guys, these are the guidelines. I mean, this is what they're saying. And so, holy moly, we better step back and realize what's going on. So people wearing gloves, you're spreading the contamination. Like, gloves should be worn and thrown away from one site to the next. Right? I posted something on this news feed about masks and how I have 9 different links where you can go and read about how masks are being worn improperly, and they shouldn't actually be worn by many of us. Right? Not all of us, but by many of us. And so look at that in the news feed. I think it's just time that we got to wake up, guys. I mean, this is absolutely absurd of what's happening. And, I have a patient that posted something on that news feed, on that link that I said, like, who do I believe it when it first came? Do I believe the newest things that came out by the CDC, the some of the research that came out in the middle of this, maybe the latest research? Like, what do I actually believe? I think it's a great question. It gets back to, is it logical that we're scared of a virus that stays in the air for 3 hours? Are we scared of a virus that stays on plastic for 3 days, or stainless steel for 3 days? Is that logical to be fearful of that? And is it sustainable to be avoiding of someone who is sitting in that table for three days before? It's just not. It's not sustainable. And so I think we got to recognize that.
Yeah, and I think what you said just highlights something that's really important, Dr. Nick, and that is, everything has changed from the moment that all these restrictions started going into place. So many things have been proven incorrect and changed, and estimates have proven to be completely wrong and overblown. And this just highlights the importance of questioning everything. Don't take anything at face value. Do your own research and make an informed decision on how you want to proceed right now. Because there's so much out there that we're seeing, like, we said, things are changing on an hourly basis, and so many things are turning out to be wrong. And what you want to do is just look at data without the emotional charge that the mainstream media is putting on it, and then make up your mind. Like you said, we're not shaming people who are wearing masks and gloves, but make sure that if you're doing those things, it's because you've read the data and you've made an informed decision on it.
Right.
I was at Whole Foods yesterday buying some groceries, and I wasn't wearing a mask, but I was up paying for my groceries. And the person behind the counter, first of all, she's behind this massive, like, plexiglass wall, okay? And she's wearing a mask. And so she's trying to ring my groceries, and she's wearing gloves, trying to operate the, like, push button thing, the computer. And she's trying to talk to me with this mask on and this wall here. I can't hear a damn word she's saying. And then she's asking me if I've got the Amazon app so she can scan, like, the barcode so I can get a discount. I don't know how to use it. So she's trying to give me instructions, and I'm trying to, like, lean my ear around the plexiglass so I can hear her. And she doesn't want me to lean my ear around the plexiglass, and she doesn't want to take her mask off to talk to me. It's bananas, man.
It's crazy. It's crazy. That being said, I mean, I understand if people are fearful, they want to wear a mask or they want me to wear a mask. Like, I get it. It's just, I really do. I mean, I understand all sides of what's happening. Doesn't mean I'm going to live that way, but I understand where you're coming from. But it's interesting because in a month or 2 months or 3 months, whatever it is, like those same people that made me wear a mask or asked that I wear a mask or wear a mask, they're going to be hugging it out. So it's like, that's a sustainability question. Like, you don't want to hug anyone anymore. Do you want to give me a high five? You don't want to give a handshake anymore. Like that's not going to last. I mean, people can say that's the new normal, but there's no such thing as that. People are going to have to require human contact. Why? Because it's natural. It is an innate thing to do, is to reach your hand out and shake somebody's hand. When you feel like there's an emotional connection, the natural, innate thing to do is to hug somebody. And honestly, if you try not to shake hands, it's actually awkward.
It's so important for mental, emotional health, man.
Oh, it's so important for physiological, mental, emotional state. And as I said, it's innate. It's innate. Like, I mean, that's something that we want to do. Like, if someone's hurting or we're celebrating them, what do we want to do? We want to high five. We want to hug them. We want to handshake. I mean, that's just what people need, right? And so I think it's going to get back to that. We know it's going to get back to that, but that's what I question.
Yeah. Question everything. Fact check everything you read. Don't base your decisions on to wear or not to wear a mask or gloves or whatever on just simply a headline or what some talking head on TV tells you to. I mean, you got to dig deeper. Because there's so much stuff that's being proven wrong. Look at data. Talk to professionals you trust, and make an informed decision. And again, we're not shaming anybody here.
Right.
We're calling things out that don't make sense to us, but ultimately the person responsible for your health and well-being is you, and you need to make sure that you're paying attention.
Right. So why don't you share with them what came out on Apple just released this week?
Oh yeah, that's fun. So I think most of the people who are following me these days probably saw my video on contact tracing, and some people said that's not how contact tracing works. They're not tracking you on your phones. We've done this many times before. Apple just put out an update. Android just put out an update, and now contact tracing is included as part of the new software update. And so we're moving in a direction of big tech tracking where you go, who you interact with. And, the governor of Illinois has talked about, and several other governors around the state have talked about hiring lots of contact tracers. J.B. Pritzker called it an army of contact tracers, numbering in the hundreds and then thousands. Wow. And if people don't participate in the program, he's talking about them actually coming to your home. So what we're talking about is actually, pull up your Apple iPhone and read the description of the update. It's right there. You can see it for yourself.
Hey, to encourage people, I would shut off your automatic update option. So stay in, what is that? You said it's 10, what is it? What was 13 point?
I want to say 13.5.
Yeah, that's right. Yep.
I think that's what.
Yeah, if you want to know which one you have, just go to, because many of you have Apple, go to the general, go to about, and you can see the software version. Mine's at 13.4.1. So I'm just on the verge of being tracked.
The other thing about the new one is it'll do facial recognition when you have a mask on.
That's creepy. Dude, that's creepy.
Yeah.
Man, that's insane.
Hello from Scotland. Hello, Pauline.
That's awesome, isn't it?
That's awesome.
Okay, so recognition of the face mask on, creepy. Now, do you think they'll use that for like to know if somebody's not wearing a mask potentially? Or is that like, am I just throwing something out there that I shouldn't?
Oh, look, anytime this technology gets rolled out, you have to think of what's going to happen if this falls into different hands.
Yeah.
Right? You might trust your president, you might trust your government to use this technology responsible, but the reality is now this technology is available to your politicians, to your leaders, and that gun can turn on you real quick.
Right.
Yeah, even if you like this technology, think about what would happen if it fell into different hands and someone wanted to use it in a way that was harmful. Yeah. So it's something you have to consider.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's my thing is if you think about like, okay, fingerprint, Face ID, you name it, all of that can be impacting that, right, and affecting that. So I think it's just reality. So I know there's a lot of people that are going to watch this, listen to this. Make sure you guys give us a thumbs up, give us some heart emojis, shares with everybody you love and care about. Our biggest thing week in, week out is to get you guys thinking, get you guys questioning, and to not be divisive in this, not to be judgmental in this, but just understand, like, we have to ask more questions. I think, a couple of patients this week, over the last few weeks have been wearing masks, and we've just been trying to share with them information and truth. And they started asking us legitimate questions without being judged. And now they've chosen not to wear masks, which is, I think that's a huge win. I think it's not a huge win for the outward appearance of they're not wearing a mask, but it's a huge win because now we actually see them. We see them transforming their thought process. And that's what it's about, like changing their thought process. And they've even said that this week, like, hey, I'm having less fear now because I'm not wearing a mask. And so I just think that's awesome. I think it's a huge win for them personally, but also as a culture. So, yeah.
Yeah. Do your research, make your choice, and live in faith, not fear.
That's right. So guys, thanks so much for listening. Dr. Casey and I will answer any questions you have. Please share this with everybody you love and care about, but we hope you have an awesome day and a great Memorial Day weekend. Bless you guys.